Good morning. Good morning, everybody watching later on YouTube. Glad you could join us, and make sure that you give me an email or a call and let me know that you watched the class today so I can give you the points. As soon as everybody gets back, we got to do a store because we're way past overdue for our store. So make sure that you let me know you're watching these so you get your points for them. Okay? Joy, do not touch the table or the recorder, okay? Because that will jiggle it. Okay, so make sure you're not touching the table. Thank you. All right, let's do our verse from last week. 1 Samuel 16:7. Say it together. 1 Samuel 16:7. For the Lord seeth not as man seeth, for man looketh on the outward appearance, but the Lord looketh on the heart. 1 Samuel 16:7. Okay, boys and girls watching, go ahead and pause the video if you know your verse and say it to someone who's there with you, or you can call me later this afternoon and say it. Remember, my phone number is 860-589-0406, or you can also email me if you talk to an adult, and my email is skiptownsley@gmail.com. So you can go ahead and do that now, and then we'll sing our song. Let's sing, we'll start today with, if you're saved and you know it, clap your hands. Ready? If you're saved and you know it, clap your hands. If you're saved and you know it, clap your hands. If you're saved and you know it, then your life will surely show it. If you're saved and you know it, clap your hands. All right, let me hear you a little bit more. All right, guys watching later, make sure you sing loud enough that I can hear you. All right, ready? We're going to stomp our feet. If you're saved and you know it, stomp your feet. If you're saved and you know it, stomp your feet. If you're saved and you know it, then your life will surely show it. If you're saved and you know it, stomp your feet. Amen. If you're saved and you know it, say amen. Amen. If you're saved and you know it, say amen. Amen.
If you're saved and you know it, then your life will surely show it. If you're saved and you know it, say amen.
Amen. Do all three. If you're saved and you know it, do all three.
Amen.
If you're saved and you know it, do all three.
Amen.
If you're saved and you know it, then your life will surely show it. If you're saved and you know it, do all three.
Amen.
Good
Can we
job.
also do the eyes?
The eyes? I don't know that version. How's that go?
If you're saved and you know it, then roll your eyes.
Roll your eyes?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. All right, so if you're saved and you know it, roll your eyes. If you're saved and you know it, roll your eyes. If you're saved and you know it, roll your eyes. If you're saved and you know it, then your life will surely show it. If you're saved and you know it, roll your eyes. Well, that makes me dizzy. We'll have to add that in next time, do all four together. We're going to sing the song that we started learning last week about being a servant. So I'll sing it. If you remember it, sing it along with me. Ready? You be a servant and I'll be a servant, like Jesus our Lord said to be. He was a servant and set the example of how to live life joyfully. Whoa, you guys did a good job remembering that. Yes, Joy.
If everybody's a servant, who's the master?
Jesus. God is our master.
Who is Jesus, God in the Spirit. Who is the family of the master?
We just all serve each other. Okay,
Jesus and the Holy Spirit. But we're servants, so we can't serve other servants.
no, servants can serve other servants. Okay, let's sing it again. You
Be a servant and I'll be a servant like Christ the Lord said to be.
He
was a servant and set the example of how to live life joyfully. Can we do the fasting?
Do a fast?
Really fast.
Excuse me. All right, ready? You be
Be a servant and I'll be a servant
like Jesus our Lord said to be. He was a servant and set the example of how to live life joyfully.
Can we do it fast?
We need to get into our lesson now. Next week we'll try to do it faster, okay? Go ahead and turn in your Bibles to Luke chapter 18. Luke chapter 18, starting in verse 10. Luke chapter 18, starting in verse 10. I have something in my throat today. Do you like it when maybe you're in class at school, or maybe you're here at church or listening to Pastor preach and they start to tell a story? I like it when Pastor starts to tell a story in his sermon, or if I'm listening to somebody give a speech and they start to tell a story. It's just so interesting, and I want to know, how is the story going to end? What's going to happen? And, pastors are especially good storytellers. I really like it when he tells stories. And his stories help me to understand better what he's preaching in his sermon. So I really like that. Do you know who was the best storyteller ever, Mary?
Jesus!
That's right, Jesus. Jesus was the best storyteller ever. Boys and girls, did you think of that before Mary said it? So Jesus was the best storyteller ever, and Jesus was really good at telling stories, and the reason he told stories was so that we could understand things better that he was teaching. So we're going to read today one of the stories that he told in Luke chapter 18, starting in verse 10. And so, Joy, would you read for just verse 10 to start us off?
Luke 15, verse 18, verse 10.
Yes, please.
Two men went up into the temple to pray. The Pharisee stood and prayed thus with him.
Oh, just verse 10, honey, but there's one more line from verse 10.
Two men went up into the temple to pray, the one a Pharisee and the other a publican.
Okay, so, actually, first let me put up Jesus. So Jesus is probably outside because he did most of his teaching outside. On the Sabbath days, he would go into the synagogue, but he's probably outside. And today he was teaching the people about something very important. As we're reading the story, you see if you can find out what it was he was trying to teach the people about that day. And there were even boys and girls would come to listen. So in this story, some people are going to the temple. Remember, the temple was in Jerusalem. Okay, Jesus isn't in Jerusalem right now, but everybody knew about the temple in Jerusalem because all of the Jewish men would go to the temple in Jerusalem 3 times a year. And that was the most important place in the whole land to them. So there were 2 people went up to the temple to pray. That's what they would do. The temple was their place to worship, just like the church is our place to worship. One was called a Pharisee, and one was a publican. Now let me tell you a little bit about Pharisees and publicans. Pharisees were a special religious group in the land of Israel, and they had 600 or more laws that they believed they needed to obey to be righteous with God. And the Pharisee would keep all of them. Now, these laws weren't necessarily laws that God gave. They could be laws that maybe some other Pharisees had made up, or some other religious leaders had made up. Or maybe they were just traditions that their families had done for many, many years. But the Pharisee thought, if I keep all these things that all these other good men have said we should do, then I am just the best, most holy person that there is. I'm just one of the holiest of the holies. That's how they looked at themselves, and that's what they thought of themselves. And they would kind of separate themselves from the other Israelites that weren't Pharisees. Oh, they're not as righteous as me, and I need to make sure I keep myself all righteous and don't hang around those low people like that. So that's the one person who went into the temple to pray was a Pharisee. Yes, Joy?
Like the King of England, like in England, high people were rich, but poor people couldn't get rich and stuff.
Yeah, kind of like that. There it was, that like a king in a land could say, "Oh, I'm more important because I'm all rich." And in this case, though, they're saying, "Oh, I'm more important because I'm more righteous and more holy." So, but remember, only God really knows who is righteous and holy, because God can see our hearts, like the verse that we just said for our memory verse. Mary?
God is righteous and holy.
But God can help us to be righteous. When we get saved, He gives us Jesus' righteousness.
Yeah, but the Pharisee didn't accept Jesus, so he wasn't righteous and holy.
Well, we'll see. We'll see what Jesus teaches in the rest of the story. Now, the other person in the story is a publican, okay? Maybe you remember me telling you how at this time when Jesus lived, the country of Israel had been conquered by the country of Rome. And the Israelites did not like the Romans because they had conquered them. And the Romans made the Israelites pay taxes to their country. I mean, if you're going to conquer another country, that's one of the main reasons you want to conquer them, is so you can get more money. So the Romans would make the Israelites pay all kinds of taxes to the Romans because the Romans wanted to get more money. And so a publican was an Israelite who had taken a job of collecting the taxes for the Romans. Can you imagine how the other Israelites felt about this person? He's one of our own countrymen, and he's betrayed us. He's a traitor. He's taking taxes from us to give to our enemies, to give to our conquerors. And we hate publicans. But not only that, usually a publican was a thief. He was a crooked kind of person that, say you owed 5 coins of taxes to the Romans, he would say, all right, hurry up, come on. You owe 10 coins of taxes to the Romans. Go ahead and pay them. And you could even say, well, there's no way I owe that much. Last time it was only 5. No, it's 10. I'm the tax collector. You have to pay what I say. So the person would have to pay the 10 coins. They had no choice. And then the tax collector, the publican, he'd keep 5 for himself. And then the other 5 coins he would give to the Romans, which was really what the tax was. And he would keep half of it for himself so that he could get rich, getting lots of money. So publicans were thieves and liars in addition to being tax collectors for the Jews' enemies. So the Israelites hated them. Joy?
Like Zacchaeus?
Exactly. Zacchaeus actually was the chief of the publicans. And I think it's next week we find out about Zacchaeus. So you can imagine how much everybody hated Zacchaeus. So make sure that you're back next week to hear about Zacchaeus. So this is a publican, and he comes up to the temple to pray. So we have a man who is very righteous, supposedly, and then we have a man who definitely is a wicked sinner. And let's see what they pray. Mary, would you read the Pharisees' prayer in verses 11 and 12?
The Pharisee, he stood and prayed, he thus with himself. God, I thank thee that I am not as other men and are
extortioners,
unjust, adulterers, or even as this publican. I fast twice in the week. I give his tithes of all that I possess.
Now this is very interesting prayer. Now he starts it off nicely. He starts it off, God, I thank thee. That's a good way to start a prayer. In fact, I try to start all of my prayers, or most of my prayers, by thanking God for things that he's done for me. But then look what he thanks God for. He says, God, I thank thee that I'm not the way everybody else is. I thank thee that I'm better than everybody else. I'm so thankful that I'm not an extortioner. Now, an extortioner is the same kind of person I just told you the publican was. An extortioner is somebody who would take more money from people than they're supposed to. Okay, so that's, what the publican is. That's an extortioner. I thank you, I don't do that. I thank you, I'm not unjust, meaning I don't do wicked things, I haven't done anything wrong. I'm a righteous person. I'm glad I'm not an adulterer. That has to do with relationships. That he's like, a person who's an adulterer doesn't keep their promises, and they don't love the people in their relationships the way they're supposed to. He says, oh no, I'm not that way. I'm a good friend. I'm a good husband. I'm a good father. I'm good in all my relationships. He says, or I'm glad I'm not even like this other stinking publican over here. Boy, I sure am glad I'm not like that. So he says, I'm glad I'm not all these bad things. Now, he was probably standing in the temple too, like Jesus tells us in other places, that people like this Pharisee, they'd go into the temple. They might even have people blow trumpets before them. I'm coming to pray to God. I'm coming to pray to God. Yes, everybody watch me. I'm going to pray now. He's probably praying in the middle of the temple very loud for everybody to hear him. And he says then in the other verse that Mary read, I fast twice in the week. Okay, that means twice a week I go without food to be more godly. And he says, and I give tithes. Now, we've talked about tithing here in class. That's when you get money, you give 1/10 of that money, 10%, to God. Well, but we're supposed to do it quietly. We don't tell everybody else that we're doing it. It's just between us and God. But this Pharisee, he goes, yes, everybody, I give tithes of everything that I have. Okay? Whew. You know what? I would not want to hear that prayer. And you know what? God didn't want to hear it either. Look back at the beginning of verse 11. The Pharisee stood and prayed thus with, what does it say?
Himself.
Himself. He wasn't praying to God. He was praying to himself. What he really was doing is bragging. He was not praying. He called it praying, but he was not praying. He was bragging to everybody in the temple who would listen about how wonderful he was. Now, when we pray, we need to make sure that we have the right heart for prayer. Because if we don't have the right heart, then God's not going to listen to us. He's not going to hear us. And we don't come to God and tell God how wonderful we are, because compared to God, we are unrighteous and unjust. The only righteousness we have is his righteousness. Let's see what the publican does. Joy, would you read what the publican prays in verse 13?
And the publican standing far off would not lift up so much as his eyes unto heaven, but smote upon his breast, saying, God be merciful to me, a sinner.
Now the publican, why would a publican be in the temple in the first place? A publican, he's somebody who seems to have even turned on his own people. And if he's lying and stealing, and you know what? The only thing I can think is the publican realized that what he was doing was wrong, and he wanted to get right with God. And he realized, look, I've done bad things, and I want to repent, and I want to confess that to the Lord. I'm going to go to the temple, and I'm going to pray. I'm going to ask God to forgive me, because that was the special place of prayer they had. So he goes into the temple, but he is so overcome with guilt and sorrow over what he's done, and he realizes that God is so holy and so just, and he realizes how sinful and wicked he is, so he doesn't even lift his eyes up to God. He doesn't even feel like he's worthy to look towards heaven where God is. So he keeps his eyes down, and he knows he doesn't even deserve to talk to God, but he